So yes, my name is Sourabh Gupta, and I was born and raised in India in a small town called Hiranagar, which is a part of Jammu and Kashmir. I grew up in a very small village, so I knew that I was always interested in the arts and I have to go somewhere where I could feel probably more inspired. So that brought me to an architecture school again in India, and then I got a scholarship to study at Parsons in New York, and I moved directly from India to New York. And then here's my first design studio in Brooklyn. I grew up in a very small house, it was a one-bedroom house to start with as a child. So there was no yard space, there was no real plants in the house either. So I went to a school where I saw so many plants, and I just also learned that you can actually grow them by just cutting. So it was just started as a bit of experiment as a child, and then from one plant to the second to the third to the fourth, so it kept multiplying. You could not even buy a pot where my village is. You have to either make your own pot or use plastic containers. So I was more inspired to just make my own pots, and I think then it started to become more of an engagement, and then it became a whole process of thinking of a pot and then growing a particular plant in that, and then kind of visualizing that as an art form itself, imagining how it would grow, and then of course the plant would take its own shape. And as someone has beautifully said, gardening is the artwork that escapes the control of its master. And I really think so, because otherwise I'm such a perfectionist that plants and gardening gives me a little bit of space where I don't have to control something. They take their own control and become something, and I just witness. While I was studying for my master's at Parsons, it was a 2 years program. I finished my first year. My scholarship was still intact, but my living sponsorship in New York was withdrawn just before my second year. So I was now living in this 8 foot by 10 feet room. I have no supplies, did not have any money, but this innate desire to create is always evolving. So paper just became the most accessible material for me to be able to work with glue and scissor and create a product. And it wasn't even intentional that I'm going to create paper flowers. It was this is something that I can create. And it also became full circle, something that I did as a child and never thought of anything of it. And in India, you really don't where I grew up, art is not something that you value, or is a very frivolous thing. In that little town, even today, if you went out to ask for a particular kind of pot, they will look at you as if you're an alien. They don't know where you have come from. So the concept of thinking out of the box was kind of the need. It's never ever a question that, can I do that? The question for me is always that, how am I going to do it? So that makes it much easier that I am going to do it now, just have to figure out how. So the concept of recycling, the concept of using only what you have is such an integral part of my practice. I'm very appreciative of that concept, that you only use what you have, and it forces you to think in different ways and allows you to be way more creative than. For me, it's always what do I have? How can I use that material? And many a times there are so many accidents that happen that I really love, that I would not have gone or received the conventional way. There's just abundance that disconnects you from the original essence of things. You can always have that feeling that you can always buy a new one, so it never allows you to connect with things. It's so easy to discard here because there's a better one available. So, but when you have only one pair of slippers and you have to make it go 3 years, you find ways to mend it in beautiful ways because it's going to be your slippers. And I find that to be intentional imperfections to be more beautiful because it has a life of its own. It tells a story. I will say that as a creative child, there are things that I've seen, and there is a fantasy version of them in your head. There is one image of something that is stuck there, maybe on a quiet, slightly breezy day, the flower has moved in a certain way, and that memory is like a frame in my mind. So many a times I would create from that memory of my experience or my imagination. And then I might go further and study it from books for some details if I have to, go online to study maybe somehow the centers and the stamen and all of that details. But now, having done that detailed work, I'm coming back to actually more, I think I'm steering towards more the fantasy version of, like, flowers, like that one moment where I feel in my mind it's a moment of poetry. Like, it just has moved in a certain way that I just want to capture that, like as if it was just captured in a photograph in that moment. I love gardening. I live in this space, cannot have a garden. So you can, I can't grow foxgloves in this room. So for me to have the capacity to create an essence of that, I mean, I am a person who would first say that, there's no match to a real thing. But that's why I'm not creating the real thing again. I'm creating something that allows you to connect with the essence of that. The flowers that they're sold in the most flower shops are so perfect that they almost look fake to me. So to create something that has a little bit of movement and imperfections allow you to think it's a tactile thing. And then you don't have to water them, you don't have to give them light. It's a perfect solution for someone living in a city. So I hope a mix of practical and emotional connection makes it viable for me to actually keep doing this for a while.